One day, during the sweltering heat that often hangs over the Sonoran Desert, a man named Carlos Castaneda, who would one day become one of the most enigmatic writers of the 20th century, sat beneath a straw-covered shelter in the courtyard of his teacher, Don Juan. There, Castaneda struggled to recall the stories of his life, searching for a single magical event that had changed his destiny. He was on the verge of despair, for all his efforts seemed in vain. And then, suddenly, a memory surfaced. A memory so powerful that it sent a shiver through his entire being. One dark night in southern Italy, following the suggestion of a friend, Carlos found himself in a brothel. There, he was met by an old woman, once an actress, or perhaps a witch. For a high price, she promised to show him something that changes you forever. She seated Castaneda in the corner of a dimly lit room surrounded by mirrors. Then, to the crackling sound of an ancient Victrola and shouted commands that sounded like a warrior's battle cries, she began her wild, awkward dance. The old, mysterious woman moved with strange rhythmic gestures until the music finally stopped and the room was swallowed by an eerie, unnatural silence. The ritual had a hypnotic effect, and Carlos, confused and uncomprehending, remained frozen until a sudden primal fear seized him, paralyzing his entire being. He fled into the night, lost and terrified. Later, Don Juan would explain, "It wasn't the woman that frightened you. You saw the darkness that filled her to the brim, the same darkness that holds almost every human being captive, making them slaves, and that darkness is the only true devil that walks the earth. Its name is human stupidity." All of us, whether or not we are warriors, have a cubic centimeter of chance. It is like a very small stick that comes out in front of us and invites us to pluck it. Usually, we are too busy, or just too stupid and lazy to realize that that is our cubic centimeter of luck. A warrior, on the other hand, is always alert and tight and has the spring, the gumption necessary to grab it. How much suffering and meaningless struggle could be avoided if a person directed their efforts against the only true enemy, their own stupidity? Stupidity is not a lack of intelligence. It is an inner darkness that penetrates a person at the moment they lose their connection to reality and turn away from the light of knowledge. Stupidity cannot learn, it cannot engage in dialogue, but it can impose its own rules and ruthlessly subjugate. It is stupidity that becomes the source of suffering, both for individuals and for entire nations. It distorts perception, replacing living reality with empty mirages. And the pursuit of these illusions inevitably leads to disaster, because disaster always accompanies those who surrender to inner darkness. The world may seem like a place ruled by dishonor, violence, and an endless struggle for survival. But is that truly how things are? The people of knowledge whom Carlos Castaneda wrote about perceive the world differently. Having freed themselves from the power of stupidity, they see it as an infinite mystery where the human being is not a random guest, but a living part of a greater design. A foolish person cannot perceive this connection, not because they are incapable, but because their perception has been captured by the inner darkness of ignorance and recklessness. The ancient knowledge of the seers teaches that if a person does not cleanse their inner space from this darkness and does not fill it with the light of knowledge, they inevitably bring suffering to themselves and to others. Yet the true cause of this pain is not the person themselves, but the force to which they once surrendered their power, their own stupidity. Stupidity blinds a person, distorts their perception, and severs their connection to truth. Thus, little by little, the darkness of hatred, anger, and alienation accumulates within them, and in the end, their entire life becomes an illusion created by their own inner darkness. Stupidity is a blind and deaf force within a person, striving to destroy those who resist and to enslave those who surrender. It acts subtly, transforming a person into someone who complains about life, while gradually losing their will and inner foundation. Yet behind this apparent weakness lies the harshness and ruthlessness of inner darkness. Stupidity is a great exploiter that infiltrates the deepest corners of a person's inner space. It violates the integrity of the temple of the higher self, stripping away dignity and will, and slowly pushing the individual toward surrender in the face of despair. Stupidity gives rise to doubt, anxiety, and suffering, not as the natural state of life, but as a distortion of it. If a person does not see kindness in the world, it most likely means that there is not enough kindness within their own heart. The people of knowledge say that within each of us burns an inner fire, capable of lighting the way even through the densest darkness of ignorance. There is no force in the world that can extinguish this spark forever, and there is no darkness powerful enough to swallow it, not even within a single individual. To live in a world of light, a person must once again fill their inner space with the light of knowledge and ignite within themselves the fire of awareness. But the path begins with cleansing oneself from inner darkness. Stupidity cannot be completely destroyed. It is woven into human nature. Yet it can be put in its proper place just as ruthlessly as it tries to rule us. Inner darkness must be tamed and removed from the seat of our destiny. A human being was not born for slavery to their own stupidity. Their true purpose is to become a living manifestation of the greatness of spirit on earth, the embodiment of the higher guiding force. We destroy ourselves, we obliterate life on this planet, we destroy the earth, and then we dress in robes and the Lord speaks directly to us, and it doesn't make any difference. Not because we are evil, but because we are dumb. Man has a dark side, yes, and it's called stupidity. Let's take a closer look at what truly hides behind the word stupidity and how it can be recognized. The common understanding reduces it to a lack of intelligence or an inability to think independently. Yet mere awareness of this changes little. If intellect alone were sufficient protection, people would not repeatedly fall into the same mistakes, disappointment, and pain. The roots of stupidity lie much deeper at the level of energetic perception. The people of knowledge, among whom was Don Juan Matus, the teacher of Carlos Castaneda, said that everything in the world, including the human being, is pure energy. Seers perceive a person as a luminous ball of energy composed of two parts, the tonal and the nagual. The tonal governs everyday perception and logical thinking. The nagual is the hidden side that allows one to perceive the world directly, without distortion. Over time, the tonal has come to dominate the Nagual, severing the natural duality of perception. This disruption became fertile ground for stupidity. On the energetic level, stupidity manifests as the tyranny of the ego over intuition, making it impossible to perceive the unseen aspects of reality. Instead of working alongside the Nagual, the tonal has become a tyrant, confining perception to a limited and impoverished fragment of existence. To be free from the rule of stupidity, one must reclaim inner wholeness and restore the balance between the tonal and the nagual, between logic and silent knowing. Let's take a look at how stupidity reveals itself at the energetic level. Stupidity is the loss of connection to silent knowledge. The pressure of the tonal over the nagual creates a constant stream of inner chatter, a mechanical monologue that replays everything a person encounters without the involvement of true will. The people of knowledge call this endless flow inner dialogue or internal chatter. They taught that to perceive the world as energy, one must enter a state of inner silence, the direct contact with silent knowledge, which comes not through words or thoughts, but through pure awareness. Stopping the internal dialogue is one of the most difficult tasks a person faces over the course of a lifetime, according to the seers. For those sincerely seeking this path, we will leave a link in the description to the Phoenix Candle practice, an effective method for halting the internal dialogue tested by personal experience of the Three Suns team. The magic key that opens the earth's doors is made of internal silence. Just cut off the internal dialogue. Stupidity is the slavery of self-importance. When the inner darkness takes hold of a person, it distorts their perception and convinces them that everything in the world happens because of them. In the knowledge of the seers, this illusion is called the sense of self-importance. Self-importance drains a person's energy and makes them vulnerable. It leads to constant self-pity, resentment toward others, anger and frustration, because reality does not conform to their expectations. In this way, an individual loses control over their own life and falls deeper into the servitude of stupidity. An exhausted person can no longer perceive energy directly. Their eyes become dim, filled with darkness instead of the radiance of power. A foolish person looks but does not see, and so they wander blind through the world, no longer moving toward knowledge but lost in the endless dark. He explained that sorcerers had unmasked self-importance and found that it is self-pity masquerading as something else. Stupidity is the only true enemy hidden behind your pain. Under the weight of self-importance, a creation of stupidity, a person accumulates the pain of disappointment. This pain is the result of distorted perception and wounded pride. A foolish person cannot find the darkness within themselves because fear holds them back from facing the true source of their suffering, and so they are unable to understand the real reasons for their pain. Through pain, stupidity forces a person to search for enemies outside, blaming the world for their failures instead of confronting the only enemy that poisons their soul, an enemy that never had a true existence of its own. This enemy is human stupidity. Stupidity is attachment to oneself, to one's personal history. Because of the lack of the light of knowledge, a person begins to cling to an image of themselves, an image shaped by their own inner darkness. The people of knowledge call this construct the personal history. Personal history is the collection of beliefs and perceptions a person holds about themselves, others, and the world as a whole. The problem is that personal history limits perception, forcing the individual to reject anything that does not fit their established story. In this way, true knowledge of the spirit is replaced by assumptions, stereotypes, and rigid ideas, cutting off the deeper path of growth. To be free, one must nurture a connection with their higher self, as the seers taught. Stupidity, through attachment to personal history, strips a person of their spiritual essence. Stupidity is the inability to stop the world. To stop the world means to break free from ordinary perception. Stupidity forces the individual to live in automatism, to follow habits, to act through patterns and stereotypes. The inner darkness spills outward through unconscious actions, bringing pain and disappointment both to the person's own life and to the lives of others. To live by patterns is to remain trapped by the weight of the past, unable to see into the future, and lost in the confusion of the present. A foolish person becomes like a machine, endlessly replaying the past without truly living. Stupidity is resistance to change. Don Juan taught that a warrior, like the entire world, exists in constant motion and transformation. But clinging to past mistakes and wounded pride, a person becomes rigid and immobile under the weight of their inner darkness. The people of knowledge, those with highly developed intuition, spoke of a moment in every life when luck appears, a cubic centimeter of chance that can change everything for the better. This chance is a manifestation of deep intent, a gift from the navigator of the path into eternity. Yet, due to inertia, a foolish person cannot see the opportunity right before them. Through inaction, chance and fortune quietly slip away, leaving the person empty-handed. Stupidity robs one of change and growth. Inner darkness blinds a person to the light of knowledge. Without knowledge, there can be no real transformation. To overcome stupidity, one must cultivate themselves both intellectually and energetically. This means developing a harmony between rational thinking and mystical perception. In other words, balancing the tonal and the Nagual. Such balance is achieved through both education and deep inner understanding. For those who are naturally inclined toward mystical perception, it is essential to develop stability in the material world through academic education, trust in science, and the cultivation of common sense. This does not mean abandoning the world of energy and symbols, but learning to apply spiritual principles within everyday life with respect for matter, the body, and logic. Strengthening the tonal in this way creates a solid foundation. Sometimes it is necessary to step back from abstraction in order to perceive something clearer and more alive. This too is part of the path of knowledge. For rational-minded individuals, it is necessary to begin expanding their worldview through a deeper understanding of the unseen laws of nature. This expansion requires stepping beyond rigid social concepts and approaching new ideas, knowledge, mysticism, and the path of the seers with care and respect, without aggression, mockery, or abrupt reactions, but with sincerity, gentleness, and depth. Such openness broadens perception, awakens feeling, sharpens intuition, and reveals the subtle connections within existence, all of which are expressions of the Nagual. By building a harmonious interaction between the tonal and the Nagual, a new flexibility arises, one capable of freeing the individual from stubbornness, rigidity, and spiritual dryness. And through this, freedom from stupidity becomes possible. Through the integration and harmony of intellect and intuition, of the tonal and the Nagual, we reclaim control over our own lives. For human beings are not evil by nature. It is stupidity, the inner darkness, that distorts them. By living in harmony, we begin to see this clearly. We come to understand who we truly are. And with that understanding, stupidity loses its hold because within us, chaos is replaced by order. Then we realize that there is no real slavery on this earth, only the voluntary captivity of stupidity. We were born to be free because around us shines light, knowledge, and truth. And for each of us, the path into infinity awaits, a path that has a heart,